Welcome to Wildcat Science with Mrs. Haugo. This is Chemistry Part 5, and we are in Section 2.1. And if you remember in Part 4, I left you with a cliffhanger. We were converting mass to number of atoms, and we were looking at how many atoms of iron are in an iron pipe that has a mass of 105 grams. So we set it up, and then you got an answer. So if your answer is something like 1.13 times 10 to the 24th, and then my unit's going to be atoms, squeeze that in, atoms, then you are correct. Good job. If you got something very different from that, you'll want to recheck your math. So let's do our check. So, did I answer the question? How many atoms? Yes, I did. My answer is in atoms. And now let's see if it's reasonable. If I have 105 grams and 1 mole is about 50 grams, that means I would have about 2 moles. Okay? So I should have about 2 moles of iron, and how many atoms would be in 2 moles? Well, if I take 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, and I take that times 2, it gives me 1.2 times 10 to the 24th. So is my answer somewhat like that? It is. So we have a reasonable answer. Good job. All right, we're going to do, now you're going to do that on your own. So you try. How many carbon atoms are in 2.79 grams? So please set that up in your notebook and get an answer, and we will go over that in class. We're going to go over our last type of problem for Section 1, and it's the flip-flop. We are now going to be converting the number of atoms to mass. So as always, you write down what you know, you write down the formula. The original quantity, which is in number of atoms, over 1 times 1 mole over 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms times the molar mass of the element over 1 mole. And that will give you your answer. And then we substitute in your numbers, calculate, and check. Okay, so there are 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd atoms in a gold ring. What is the mass of the golden ring? First thing we're going to do is we're going to write down what we know. So we know that there are 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd atoms of gold. Gold is a U. And we're trying to figure out what is the mass. So our question mark is mass. And then the next thing we always do is we write down our formula. I will leave that up to you if you would like to rewrite the formula. But you do need to set up the equation and write it down in your notebook with us. So my original quantity is 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd atoms. 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd atoms over 1, that's a times 1 mole over 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms times our molar mass. And if you remember, in our molar mass, we always have to go to our periodic table. So gold is a hard one. It is AU, and it is 196.97 rounded to the nearest hundredth. Grams over 1 mole. Okay, I gave myself a little bit more room to work. And then the next step is I'm going to cancel out the units that will cancel and make sure I have the correct units. So atoms cancels with atoms, moles with moles, and I'm left with grams, which is what I'm looking for. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to have 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd times 1 times 196.97 divided by 1 times 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd times 1. So you'll want to make sure you use parentheses and have time multiply everything at the top and then divide it by, and make sure you use parentheses around 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, otherwise you'll get a crazy number. So please do your math and get an answer. Okay, if you got something like 25.8, you are correct. 25.8, and my unit is grams. So we got an answer. Now let's check to see if it is reasonable. So if I have, let's see, did I answer the question first? There are 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd atoms of gold in a ring. What is the mass of the golden ring? Yeah, so I got a mass, so that's great. I answered the question. And is it reasonable? So 7.89 times 10 to the 22nd is a little bit smaller. It's about a factor of 10 smaller than a mole. So, because 10 to the 22nd is one factor of 10 smaller than 10 to the 23rd. So I have about a 10th, more than a 10th of a mole, and we know that 1 mole of gold, excuse me, 1 mole of gold would be 196.97 grams, and a tenth of that would be 19.6 grams. And so, do I have a number that's about 20 grams? And I do, 25.8. And 25.8 isn't that heavy, so that seems reasonable for our golden ring. Now I would like you to do this on your own. So there are 2.7 times 10 to the 22nd helium atoms in a balloon. What is the mass of the balloon? All right, so please make sure you write that out and get an answer, and we will go over that in class. That concludes our videos on 2.1. In our next video, you've graduated to 2.2 and from atoms to molecules. I will see you then. Bye.